Welcome to the Better Human Podcast. I'm Colin, your host. 5-ish minutes of actionable content or a big idea to help you help yourself become a better human and live a better life, right? Because it's about the journey, not the destination. The destination is the grave. Where you're trying to get so fast. Be in the moment. Work on yourself. Stop nexting. Be grateful. Today's idea is the most prevalent and common bias that we all succumb to. Okay? Confirmation bias. Confirming things you want to confirm, or basically only seeing things that match with your worldview, and more importantly, not being able to assimilate, absorb, or even quite literally see or hear things that conflict with what you already believe or want to believe. Because when information comes into your brain that conflicts with your thoughts or beliefs or what you're trying to accomplish or whatever, it creates cognitive dissonance, which is that pain of like, I always imagine the robot, like, you know how a robot like glitches? It's like, you like feed it some input that short circuits the brain and then it can't function. That's what cognitive dissonance is. And it's why humans are so prone to confirmation bias, because they want to avoid that at all costs. The reason for this is simple. Actually, it's not even simple, it's complex, but it's easy to summarize. And the first step to avoiding it or getting better at being more open in your mind and being less susceptible to this, because you're not going to remove it completely, that's just something we have to accept, is understanding it, being able to recognize it, and as it goes with everything, becoming aware of it. Because you can't improve something you're not even aware of is there. You have to be able to see what you're doing and be aware of what you're doing to be able to have any conscious ability to improve it or change it or reduce the negative effects, etc. It's very simple. In the wild, our ancestors lived as hunter-gatherers. We were small bands. We were basically a family. We were a tribe. And it's what's produced the best and worst of our species. This survival mechanism that Mother Nature figured out that moved us to the top of the food chain was group survival. In a world without gunpowder and advanced technology and even reading or writing, you had to use words, stories, and beliefs and memory to be able to cohesively grow, adapt, survive, hunt together, etc., in an environment that was extremely hostile. What this meant was the individual human was incentivized to think like the rest of the group, disincentivized to think outside or to challenge the group's identity or beliefs, because that could actually get you killed. You don't want to do anything to rock the boat. A simple way to think about this is hunter-gatherers were what is known as fiercely egalitarian, meaning everybody was as equal as possible. Nobody was above and nobody was below, because either was a threat to the group. If somebody was above and they've got a big ego, they start thinking they're better than everyone, that could be a threat in a lot of situations: hunting, sharing resources, hoarding resources, etc. If somebody was below, and this is where I think the origin of bullying comes from, is if you're below or perceived as being below a group or not up to a certain standard or status quo, you were then a threat because you're considered weaker, you're a liability, etc. So what did humans use as a way to keep things as equal as possible? They used shame, they used ridicule, and they used what we all know is very powerful: a bunch of people staring at us and be like, what are you doing? You're this, you're that, you're whatever. Name calling, shaming, guilting, etc. The group and being signaled out from a group is very, very, very dangerous to our biology, because our biology believes we still live in the wild, and that if people are coming at us and we're doing things to threaten our status in that group, if we have different ideas or beliefs, or we challenge things, or we don't do the right thing, or we don't say the right thing, or whatever, our biology believes that that could kill us. So it tries to mitigate that at all costs. And this is why in the modern world, our egos lead us so astray, because we care so much about what people may or may not think. We're not even conscious of these things usually. And we lie to ourselves because we can't accept reality. We can't accept the fact that creates dissonance. And that's why we succumb to confirmation bias. Now, of course, I could go on and on about this, and I'm doing a very simple explanation of this. But when you understand this, hopefully you could start catching yourself, information's coming at you, and you hear something you don't like, or you go online and somebody says something you don't like, and you feel a need to leave an aggressive comment or to pick one thing out of their speech or video or what they said and then attack that. That's you actually succumbing to confirmation bias. And it's your projecting like response because something created cognitive dissonance in your brain. The problem is, there's a lot of problems, but the big problem is, and also the kind of like irony here and the paradox here in the modern environment, is that the things that create dissonance are probably the things that you need to really unpack. You need to really explore. Because even if you disagree with the thing that's creating dissonance, at least you've done your due diligence and your critical thought so that you are now stronger in what you believe or in what the information that has come at you, like you've processed more information and you actually have a better worldview. You have a better belief system. You have stronger thoughts that have been run through critical analysis. Instead, the base level for most people is they can't even hear, see, or watch somebody say something that they may not agree with, so they attack that person. And that's a way to kind of appease the dissonance. Oh, that person's a this or that, or they label something or whatever. Because it's really hard for the human brain to think hard and critically. Most people don't want to do it. There's obviously a lot of problems with ego, and you have to unpack that, and you have to get into like self-awareness and identity and all these different things, right? But then there's just the literal calorie expenditure of thinking hard. It takes calories to think hard and deeply and for long periods of time. And it's why our species doesn't like to do it, because again, our species believes it's in the wild. You have to conserve calories. You can't be just thinking away all day if you don't know when your next meal is going to come along. So again, it's like there's so many implications for understanding our evolutionary past, understanding biology, understanding brain chemistry, etc. And it's really fascinating stuff. Confirmation bias for you, though, is when you start finding it where you only are following people that you 100% agree with, or you're only reading things and doing things or whatever that confirm what you already believe. If you do that enough, if you take that to its logical end, you will become rigid in your beliefs, you'll become rigid in your growth, and you'll miss out on probably a lot of opportunity. Confirmation bias is not a good thing in a modern world. What you actually need in a world where there's unlimited information and it's constantly changing, you need an open mind, you need a skeptical mind, and more importantly, you need a skeptical to yourself mind. So the things that you think you believe, you need to do as Socrates said and kind of remove all that and admit to yourself that you know nothing. And that's why Socrates was wise, because he wasn't dogmatic with that, and he used questions, and he wanted to change his mind. Like you have to want to not succumb to confirmation bias. You have to want to get cognitive dissonance, because when you're getting cognitive dissonance, you're pursuing sources of information that is challenging your worldview. It doesn't mean you're going to agree with these people all the time. A lot of times you probably won't. But if you can sit with the dissonance and you can analyze it and spend the energy that's needed to process it, see if your belief system needs updating, see if there's any merit to what they're saying, see where the holes are, but not just one-sided. Don't just find the holes so that you can feel better about yourself. That's the confirmation bias 101. You want to actually critically think about it. And you want to keep an open, skeptical mind. You want to have strong beliefs loosely held, meaning easily able to change your mind when new information comes along. And you do that with an open mind, a growth mind forever. And that's how you become a winner in the modern environment. Like it's the new operating paradigm for the human mind that every human needs to survive and live, and to thrive, I should say. Survive to an extent, but not as much. You can actually pretty much survive by just getting the drip of society and all the comforts and conveniences it'll give you. But to thrive, to grow, to adapt, to become better, you need an open operating growth mind. And confirmation bias is a killer. And running away from dissonance, or worse, attacking people that generate for you, that's really bad. That's really dangerous for you. It's also dangerous for society, which we won't get into today. But I can talk about that on the Better Sovereign Show, which is more about current events and politics, Bitcoin, freedom, etc. Whereas this show, The Better Human, is about betterment, growth, personal development, enjoying the journey, etc. So I went a little bit over, but this topic is so important that I felt the need to do that. Make sure you get on the Better Human newsletter over at colin.coach. Subscribe on iTunes, podcast places, Google, all the different places, and YouTube to get the shows. And I will see you in the next one.